All right, now we're back with the Athletics Fantasy Cheat Sheet brought to you by Jock Market. Talking Pittsburgh Steelers with Mark Kaboly. Mark, big question right off the get-go is we know what happened last season with Ben Roethlisberger. You're saying the arm looks, should I say great? I don't know. Like, you tell me, is like, how good should we feel about Ben Roethlisberger, who just 2 years ago threw for 5,000 yards?
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about his arm whatsoever right now. And obviously that was the biggest question coming into the season. I mean, into training camp, if he was going to be able to throw the ball 5 yards, 10 yards, or 50 yards. I don't think you have to really worry about that. You might need to worry about some of the receivers he's throwing to, if they can make the next step, or maybe the offensive line. But he's been looking good. He's been practicing every day, which is unusual for him. He's really not on a pitch count. He says he is, but I have yet to see it. He's only missed one practice, and that's just because, taking the vet's day off. I mean, the accuracy there is a philosophy. The velocity is there. I think everything is there with him. I don't think you have to really worry about him. Maybe there's a little alteration in his throwing motion with some shorter passes, but that seemed to actually even worked its way out over the past couple of days as well. I think he's looking as good as he's ever has, to be honest with you.
All right, so second thing is, first of all, I really appreciate the Star Wars t-shirt. The second part is, let's get to those wide receivers. So I'm going to start with the big one, and then we'll get to the second part in here in a second. But first one is, there was a lot of people last year who said, can JuJu Smith-Schuster be a number one? As in, can he get that defensive attention where he gets bracketed and double teamed and, there's somebody spying him underneath? Like, JuJu Smith-Schuster, we really didn't get to see him with Ben Roethlisberger. We know he struggled at times, but again, look at the quarterback play. What's your confidence level like? If you're playing fantasy, would you say, I don't care, JuJu Smith-Schuster, he can handle the number one duties, he should be a wide receiver one?
Well, I would say he would be a late wide receiver one, just because of what you did see last year, because, it's really unfair to him where he got thrown into that one spot, and early on in the season, he did see a lot of the extra attention added to him. But by the time, you're in mid-season here, defenses quickly realized it didn't matter who you put on him, because there's a pretty good chance that the ball was coming out of the quarterback's hand really quickly, and there wasn't going to be much accuracy with it or anything to that point. I mean, where JuJu and Ben were very good at the first 2 years, were able to ad lib on some things. That couldn't happen last year with Duck and Mason Rudolph. It was basically call the play and go. So in that regard, you should at least like him to have a better season than last year. I mean, he was banged up a little bit, but there's still skepticism out there. I mean, I haven't seen a ton from him in training camp. He looks better. It looks like he's gotten into that, what I call that, contract shape. He knows there's a contract waiting for him at the end of the year, or at least in March. So he put himself in position to be able to get that. But I wouldn't put the farm on him right quite yet. He will be better, but there's a ton of different options Roethlisberger has, and he tends to like to spread those around.
So let's talk about those options. And so what I've been saying and writing, and I'll see if you agree, is I kind of feel like before DK Metcalf came to the Seahawks, that second rotating, and I say rotating wide receiver, I feel like that's going to be the Steelers this year. I feel, in my opinion, Dionte Johnson, probably the best all-around game. James Washington, the best deep ball guy. Chase Claypool, a good 50-50 big body guy. But I feel like because Chase Claypool is making noise, that it's for fantasy purposes. 1 week it's going to be Dionte. The next week it's going to be James. The next week it's going to be Chase. And it's just going to be maddening trying to figure out who it is. Do you agree, or do you think somebody kind of has that inside leg up on the number two role?
Well, I think Dionte by far, to be honest with you, has that upper leg on that number two. Some people may even suggest he might be pushing JuJu for that number one status, because he has that much promise, and he did have 50 some odd catches last year, most of any rookie a year ago, and he really got better as the season went on. So he could have that next step. I mean, mind you, he did that last year with Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges. I think the receivers are where you're going to have an issue, is each one of them are going to have a role. I mean, JuJu, like you said, he can be a guy that can stretch the field. He can catch the ball, the tough catches. Dionte can catch and run very well. James Washington to do the combat catches down the field. Chase Claypool might be actually limited to third downs and maybe red zone. So Claypool could get you maybe 20 points in 1 week. than have no catches the next week. I think that's where it is. As well, not to throw in, I mean, you got 2 tight ends that are going to try to get the ball. 3 running backs are going to try to get the ball. I think it's going to be a Belichick frustration type of thing, trying to figure out who is going to be that guy for that particular day. I don't think there's too many people on that offense you could just throw in there and say they're going to get me, 25 points every week, because I don't think that's how they are.
Well, I chuckled when you said the tight ends, because I want you to tell me yes or no you believe them. Eric Ebron tweeted, "If I'm playing fantasy, you're drafting me this year." I'm paraphrasing, but he's saying he's the guy. He would draft himself in fantasy. Is he going to get back to that one great season we saw with the Colts?
I mean, it's possible, because they need a red zone threat. They had no red zone threat last year. They went from first to last. A lot of that had to do with the quarterback. So, and we know what Ebron did a couple years ago in Indy in the red zone, so that could be a possibility. But Roethlisberger's never had a guy this athletic can go down the middle of the field and stretch it. I mean, I've seen it in practice a handful of times. If you're lining up a safety against him or an outside linebacker and you're just running down the seam and there's no safety there, you're not going to win. I mean, he's going to throw you the ball, and Roethlisberger loves throwing the tight ends the ball. They want to get 2 tight ends on the field as much as possible, so they can create that matchup where, they need to flex somebody out. They need to do something to create a matchup. They can do it. So, hey, put it this way, and Ebron's no dummy. He actually spent a couple nights at Roethlisberger's house during the pandemic, so he's probably buttering them up a little bit to get some balls across the middle. So as long as Ebron's head stays in the game and the ball's thrown to him, he could be fabulous. But all I keep hearing from, even outside people in Detroit and Indy is if it gets away from him mentally, he could be a mess.
Yeah, that's something we've seen before. All right, last one we'll get you out of here on is the backfield. Look, we know what James Conner, he was seeing what James Conner can be. Obviously, for fantasy purposes and for what the Steelers are going to be looking like this year, we're wondering if something were to happen to him again, hasn't been the picture of health, even in this great season, was only 13 games. Who is the next man up? And you've reported that Benny Snell, and it's August, so everybody's in the best shape of their life, but you're saying he really cut weight. And I kind of want you to sell me on Benny Snell, because I don't want to go down the plotter role with him, but when I've always seen Benny Snell, I've kind of likened him to Jordan Howard, where it's like, hey, you know what? 20 running backs can do what Benny Snell can do. So is he the answer if something were to happen to Conner? And should we believe that he was really looking good?
Oh, all indications have it. He went from, I believe, 224 to 212 in the offseason. And that's not as I like he used to say, Benny Snell football that we used to know in Kentucky, where he'd run you over. They did a drill the other day where he made about the same safety miss him 4 or 5 times. He has some nimble feet right now. I think what he is he's a facsimile of James Conner. He's not going to get on the field very much. He's not going to get an opportunity as long as Conner is healthy. But if Conner gets hurt, like he has every single year, he's been in professional football, I think Snell is Conner-like. He can do everything that Conner does. And you can't rule out that year 1 to year 2 transformation in Pittsburgh with running backs. We saw Le'Veon Bell drop weight year 1 to year 2, and he had a 2,200 all-purpose yard season. Conner dropped weight year 1 to 2, and that's when he had the Pro Bowl season. So Benny Snell's following that same path, and he has all the talent. So I always been saying this: if you're drafting James Conner, you better wait maybe a round or 2, and you better pick Benny Snell, because you're probably going to need him. He's probably going to do the same thing that Conner would do.
So basically, you're telling me if I want to get in shape, I should go sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers, at least as a backup running back. They know
working. It's happened to the last 3 running backs. I can't remember what Jonathan Dwyer and Rashard Mendenhall and Isaac Redmond did before that, but I do recall the last 3.
Best shape ever. All right. More of Mark Kaboly, more of the fantasy coverage at theathletic.com/fantasy or draft kit. No fantasy, just /draft kit, and it's 30% off. So make sure you check out Mark and follow everything Steelers for that type of insight. Appreciate it again, Mark.